Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sunnywasser. I'm back for the 262nd Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. It is great to have you all with us. We got 36 people to start, and boy, do we have a ton to talk about, as you might guess. We're going to get an in-person, on-the-ground greeting from Minnesota from our great friend HEDY TRIPP up in St. Cloud. I don't know about you guys, but I listened to the live stream from Minneapolis. I actually heard Bruce while I was driving across the California freeway system. So that was really fun. And Eddie's going to talk to us about Minnesota, what happened there. Then we're going to go straight into, we got Howie Hawkins with us, and I do want to talk while we wait for MV Romana and others to talk about energy. We're going to be talking about renewable energy for the first hour or so, and then we're going to go deep, deep, deep into the question of what comes next after the No Kings March. And I'll tell you what happened to me on my No Kings March, but later we're going to be joined by some really powerful people, John Bonifaz and John Brakey and Ken Bennett. And who's the headliner, Steve? Steve Caruso?
Jessica Denson and John Bonifaz, which we're waiting for,
Yes.
hopefully.
Well, they'll be coming in the second hour.
Well, Jessica is here now.
Already?
Yes,
Okay. Um,
she just came in. Just
Wow.
okay. Well, we'll say hi to Jessica Denson. Let's go. As I said, we're going to start in Minnesota. I want to talk about Ukraine briefly with Howie Hawkins from the Green Party and who's really behind this Iran war. We're waiting for MV Romana to talk about renewables and very important developments at the Palisades nuclear plant in Michigan, which we've been dealing with. And second hour is going to be headlined by Jessica Denson and John Bonifaz and more. We're going to talk about election protection. We're also joined by the great John Steiner. John, we hope you're doing good. We're almost up to 50 people, but let's rock and roll here. Hedy, tell us what happened in Minnesota with No Kings at the flagship march. I did hear the boss on the radio, and you were there.
I was in St. Cloud, Minnesota, but most of
Okay.
my family were in Minneapolis. There are about 200,000 who was reported in Minneapolis. And I put into the chat the live stream link. Um, you have, you had Bruce Springsteen, Jane Fonda, Joan Baez, Bernie Sanders, but here are the power women in Minneapolis. You have KARL GROSSMAN, who's the mayor of St. Paul, speaking there. You have, let me see, you have Malika Daher of RISE, that's the Reviving the Islamic Sisterhood for Empowerment. And then you have, of course, Nakima Levy Armstrong, an amazing speaker. And I had introduced you to her last week, talking about No Kings as well as Target is still on strike. We are striking for that. Here is St. Cloud. Supposedly there were more than 8,000 over the 3 hours. I think I was the only one with no nukes though, Sonny, but I put it there. And it was like 3 blocks on either side of the street. And a lot of cars were just honking their horn, which is great. So
Wonderful.
that's where we are.
Well, it's good to see that there's no snow on the ground in Minnesota. So I guess ice is out of Minnesota. Is that right?
Now we have 5 times as many as usual, not 2,000, but 500. They're over. They are insidious. They are still there, and there's trainings that is going to be continuing to happen on how to deal with ice. There's a lot of legislation coming through the state legislature, and I'm trying to do something with the St. Cloud City Council and Mayor, which, yeah,
Well,
trying
what
to,
are you trying to do? What's your thing there? And then we're going to talk to Jessica and
yeah.
then
I
Howie.
want
But
I want to I want to see the idea that St. Cloud become a sanctuary city. Minneapolis and St. Paul are sanctuary cities. The state comes under a sanctuary jurisdiction, but St. Cloud is not yet a sanctuary city. So that's what I have the capacity to do right now.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for that report from Minnesota. It was I actually, after I came home, and since you tried to do no nukes, what happened to me, I got lost going to my local No King's Day march. So I went to Topanga where I knew there would be a march, and they actually let me speak, and I was the last speaker. I think they regretted it actually because I gave a real rant about 3 Mile Island. Nobody knew that March 28th was the anniversary of the accident at 3 Mile Island. I gave a total no nukes rant and scared the hell out of everybody about Diablo Canyon, which is upwind of here. And they finally gave me the hook, but it was okay. It was really gratifying. But they say 8 million people. And the question we're going to deal with in deep, deep depth in the second hour is what do we do next? Jessica Denson, we're honored to have you with us. You want to say a few
Harvey,
words about where we're going next? And we're
Mike.
going to come back to you in a while. But Jessica Denson, please say hi to us.
She left. She'll be back in about an hour.
Oh, okay. All right. She went out to get a Subway or something.
Mason,
And I don't know, do we see MV Ramana with us? Is he on the call?
No, he isn't in here yet, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
Harvey, Mason
Yeah.
was at the rally in Newark, Ohio. Do you want to have him talk about the rally there?
Yes, real quick, please do.
And talk about Ohio politics if you want a little bit, maybe. I don't.
Yes,
something-
go ahead. We can do that. Then we'll go to Howie because we want to talk about Ukraine, which nobody's talking about. And then well, hopefully MV Ramana will join us. But go ahead.
Well, I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. My name is Mason Blankenship, and I'm running for state representative in District 68 here in Newark, Ohio, Licking County. I'm running against Thaddeus Claggett. I'm running because I believe that this position is about service, not status, unlike my opponent. So what does that mean?
Okay, Mason, we don't endorse candidates, but so keep your stuff to actual policy substance.
Okay, what would you like to hear about?
What do you want? What do you stand for on energy, on democracy, on immigration?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So immigration, I feel like we are okay having a closed border until we're able to fix the process on our end. I'm married to an immigrant. I've been through the process. It is a headache, to say the least, and it is also very expensive. So when it comes to immigration, that's kind of my stance on that. When it comes to the border situation, when it comes to stuff going on with ICE, I mean, it's just completely unacceptable in every manner. I was in the United States Marine Corps. I did a billet of security forces as well, where we got training on this type of weapons handling, and then also on how to work with crowds and how to work with people at the gate and all these types of different things. And even in country, we don't treat people the way that ICE has treated Americans in Minnesota. And it's just completely unacceptable. And I think that we need to abolish ICE. And I think that we'll be completely fine without them. I mean, they didn't really have a big role until after 9/11 anyway. So I think we can kind of go back to that. Go ahead.
Mason, Tom Hartman had a thing on this morning talking about federal law that says the military should never be employed around polling stations. And
Yeah.
it's fine, you know about that, finable up to like 5 years imprisonment there. So
Yeah, I completely obviously I don't agree with them putting anybody at the polling stations. I mean, if I can't even go there and pass out water, I don't know why ICE should be able to go there and try to deter people from voting.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about voting and we want to talk about the SAVE Act, I view that as nothing more than just a poll tax, right? Which is also unconstitutional. If they want people to have IDs, then the federal government needs to provide IDs for everybody.
Yeah,
That's
whole
what I
thing's
personally feel about it.
built on a false premise that people are stealing the election by, lying and cheating. Well, we've seen that happen. That's just projection.
So Mason, you were at a No Kings rally in Ohio. Which part
I
of
was.
Ohio? How many people were there?
Licking County, I think the count that I saw was reported was around 1,200 people. And then we went downtown and it was, I think, close to 13,000 or so.
In Columbus.
In Columbus, there were 13,000.
I think something like that.
Okay, very good. Well, Mason, and of course, we know that you're totally for renewable energy. And when you get time, I'll tell you the story of renewable energy in Ohio, which is beyond infuriating.
Oh,
So,
I'm sure. Yeah.
so keep coming back with us and listening if you will. Is there any final word you want to say before I move to Howie Hawkins?
No, I'm all right. You can go ahead and take it.
Okay, well, keep with us, please, Mason. It's great
All
to have
right.
you with us.
Thank
Call
you.
Howie Hawkins, our buddy from the Green Party, for a specific reason. That had to do with a conversation I had during No King's Day, which is the role of Putin and Russia in the Iran invasion. And, you know, we're all talking about the horrors of the murder and the mayhem going on in Iran and in Gaza, but nobody is particularly talking about Ukraine. And the argument I had was the possibility, which we've actually never really discussed on these calls, and which I see nowhere in the major media. What is Putin's role in the Iran war? We know that he has a tremendous amount of sway with Donald Trump for various reasons. We know that Putin was close to Jeffrey Epstein in very tangible ways. Howie Hawkins, you work extensively with the people in Ukraine. What is the feeling among people in Ukraine and elsewhere about Putin's role in the Iran war?
Well, whether Putin talked to Trump about the war before it launched, it's clear he's benefiting in three big ways. First is the surge in oil prices, which is refilling Russia's coffers for its war machine. In fact, the Wall Street Journal had a headline that said, as Iran war pushes up oil prices, Putin can barely conceal a smirk. Now, oil and gas accounts for 30 to 50% of Russia's state revenues over the last decade. Their military budget is now 40% of their revenues, of their state budget, which means oil and gas revenues fund the war. And so now with the prices surging, the war machine is being refunded. That's the first thing. The second thing is weapons that were intended for Ukraine are being diverted to the war in Iran. And that's good for Putin. I mean, this happened under the Biden administration. Trump officials this weekend denied it was happening now, but there are not many weapons in the pipeline. Trump has pretty much cut it off. And, you know, the stupidity of the Trump officials on this is just unbelievable. They've been firing $4 million Patriot missiles and $12 or $14 million THAAD interceptor missiles to knock down $50,000 Iranian Shahed drones, when the Ukrainians have $1,000 interceptor drones that can do that job. And so Ukraine offered to help the US and the Gulf states. And Trump, you know, the vain fool that he is, said, we got the best drones in the world. We don't want Ukraine's help. But this weekend, the Gulf states, several of them signed contracts to get those interceptor missiles. And the thing is, the US is running out of Patriot missiles. They only produce 750 a year. They fired off 800 of them in the first week of the Iran war. In over 4 years, Ukraine's only got 600. So, you know, this is bad for Ukraine. And then the whole geopolitical narrative, people are spinning it, the Russians in particular, that Ukraine is supporting the Israeli US assault on Iran. And that's the narrative. And while there's no love lost between Ukraine and Iran because Iran provided Shahed drones for Russia to fire at Ukraine, I got a quote today from Zelensky that he said, and you know, he's looking at it like Putin from the other side. It's not good for Ukraine. He said, I am sure Russia wants a long war. They get benefits. The US is focusing on the Middle East and may decrease military help to Ukraine. Sanctions are partially lifted. I only see benefits for Russia from the war with Iran continuing. So that's the picture. It's good for Putin and bad for Zelensky and Ukraine.
Well, and of course, the Russians have actively helped the Iranians in this war. Is that correct?
That's the reports. They're providing intelligence and actually upgraded Shahed missiles they manufacture now in Russia back to Iran.
And it was a Shahed missile from Iran that hit Chernobyl. Is that correct?
Uh, yeah,
It
probably.
is.
It was definitely a Russian drone. I don't know if it was a Shahed. It probably was because that's what they're using. Yeah, hit the sarcophagus that contains radiation leaks above the remnants of the Chernobyl nukes.
Well, I'm surprised I don't hear anyone else piping in here, but to me, the question has to be answered. People are, rightly, of course, talking that Netanyahu and the Israelis have very strongly pushed the United States to attack Iran. This is something that Netanyahu has wanted for a long, long time. He's been very clear about it. And of course, there is a lot going on, to put it mildly, in Gaza. The question then becomes, which I don't see anybody asking, did Putin, well, let's put in another phrase here, follow the money. Who has benefited from the attack on Iran? As you say, Howie, it's been Putin. Is it possible that Putin twisted Trump's arm to do this attack in Iran and then turn around and supported the Iranians? It would certainly be in character. And remember again, I can't mention this enough, Putin and Jeffrey Epstein were very close. This is not conspiracy theory. This is known. And we don't know about the girls, the young women. We don't know if Putin was involved with that. We would surmise that if Putin was close with Jeffrey Epstein, that he might have compromising photos of Donald Trump in the Epstein orbit. But we do know for sure that Putin and Epstein were involved with Trump in money laundering. There's no doubt about that. So, Steve Caruso, did you want to raise your hand here?
Yeah, there's a lot going on with the recent bombing by Ukraine on Russian oil depots. Even though he's able to sell this oil at a higher price, he doesn't have the facilities to do it now. The ports are being bombed. The Ukrainians are, I just read, I had it on a screen, just gained 480 square miles in one of the regions. Russia has not moved advanced. They're losing about 1,300 individuals every day. So add that, 30,000 a month, something like that. The idea that Russia is some kind of superpower able to overwhelm, even without Trump's help, Ukraine is just a myth at this point from the way it looks. Thanks.
Okay. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I see these videos, and Howie, you probably see them every night on YouTube. There are videos from Ukraine that portray the Ukrainians kicking the hell, I can say hell, I think, out of the Russians. And I'm sure many people on the call, we have 80 people with us. Many of you, I'm sure, see these Ukrainian videos where if you watch them, as I do, one or two a night sometimes, showing Ukraine absolutely destroying the Russians and basically portraying the idea that the Russians are being completely wiped out in this war. Now, it does seem to be pretty widely conceded that the Russians have lost 1.5 million soldiers, either to death or injury. I think that's an accurate figure. I've seen it in other media. But Howie, what is the feeling here among the Ukrainians? Are they winning? And what will this Iranian invasion do to them?
I don't have a good read on, grassroots Ukrainians. I mean, I talked to left activists there. Of course, they're opposed to the war on Iran, partly because it's wrong and partly because of what it's doing to Russia's, funding and what it means for support for Ukraine, So they're pretty clear about that. One of the parallels that also hasn't been reported is there were strikes near the Iranian nuclear power plant
Right.
by the U.S. and Israeli, and Russia's been doing that to Ukraine's. They're hitting substations that power cooling systems, which means Russia's Iran or U.S. and Israel doing the same thing to Iran with respect to nuclear plants that Russia's been doing to Ukraine, and that's just another thing that scares the hell out of me.
Well, we've been talking about that, and KARL GROSSMAN is on the phone with us on the Zoom call, and we've been writing about the vulnerability of American reactors to drone strikes. We've already had a drone strike at Chernobyl, and Chernobyl was also put into total chaos when the Russian troops marched through there. And we get no response whatsoever. I have never seen, outside of the things that Carl and I, Kevin Kamps, and other people in the safe energy camp write, I have never seen in anything resembling the mainstream media an article warning about the vulnerability of commercial atomic reactors to drones. Carl, have you seen anything anywhere other than what you write? Oh, you're muted. And Howie, is this something that's discussed among the Ukrainians?
It absolutely is. I mean, they know they lived through Chernobyl, at least the older generation, and they're afraid that something like that is going to happen again. So yeah, it's very much on their minds.
Well,
And
we've
the other thing, and you said, how do they feel about the war generally? I mean, we have good polling that shows a majority is willing to make the compromise that Zelensky suggested of freezing the front lines and proceeding from there diplomatically on the status of the occupied territories if Ukraine can get security guarantees. And of course, Russia rejects all that. And the polls show that if that's the case, overwhelming majorities, 80, 90% of Ukrainians say, okay, then we're going to defend our country. We're going to fight to defend our country. So they don't feel like they're losing. They feel like they're holding off Russia, which has spent more time attacking Ukraine than the Soviet Union spent to push Hitler's Nazi army back to Berlin.
Well, there's another thing too, which I'm, I don't often get angry because I usually talk to people that agree with me, but someone was portraying to me that Ukraine is a fascist country and that Russia is only pushing back on the new Nazis the way, the old Soviet Union pushed back on the Germans. Is there any You deal with Ukrainians all the time, Howie. Is there any realistic accuracy to describing Ukraine today as a fascist country?
It can be criticized as a neoliberal country, and the left does that. But they laugh at these people that say they're fascist, led by a fascist state led by a Jewish president, a Ukrainian, a Crimean Tatar Muslim who was defense secretary, an ethnic Russian who is their, the head of their military. They've got Afro-Ukrainians in their council, their parliament. There's a Korean Ukrainian who is governor of one of the oblasts. I mean, they just roll their eyes when they hear that. The fascist country is Putin's
That's all
Russia,
Russian propaganda.
which has totally suppressed, freedom of speech, freedom of press. If you call the invasion of Ukraine a war, you can go to prison in Russia instead of a special military operation.
Oh my
Yep.
God. Steve and then Michelle.
they Russia has cut out Telegram usage, which they are using on the front for defensive purposes by Russia. Obviously, Elon Musk wants to make more money, apparently, so he cut out the Russians from Starlink, so he's on the right side of whatever. And they're taking down, people can't even use, they're shutting down the internet. People can't use the normal phone style economic interactions with the banks, buy food and groceries, the whole thing. I mean, the whole country's shutting down because of the lockdown on the internet because they're afraid that the Ukrainians are using cellular information to launch an attack. So,
Well, it's interesting because this is a meme on the left. Because they also say that somehow Ukraine is a tool of NATO to aggress against the Russians. But, to me, Putin is about as loathsome a human being as I've ever seen. Michelle, Anonymous?
Yeah, I did a paper at school in the fall semester. My paper, I was studying a class on critical thinking, and we had to do our papers and presentations on fake news. And my particular one was about Russia versus Ukraine. And I found out that the Russian television station one, as far back as 2013, was saying lies and spouting false news about Ukraine and calling them Nazis and stuff of that sort. And the reason they do that is because the Russian people have bad memories of the German Nazi invasion during war during World War II. So they play off of that and call the Ukrainians that, even though they're not. And there have been, I don't have time to go into everything that I learned in my research, but they've done a lot of, besides the television, they've done online propaganda with these troll farms by this friend of Putin's that started way back around the end of just right about the time they annexed Crimea is when they started a lot of this stuff. And it's been going on. They eventually got caught trying to affect our elections with their English language versions, and a lot of their sites got torn down or not allowed in Europe and in United States. But then they found a workarounds by laundering their propaganda through far-right media in the West. And also they scrubbed from their YouTube videos the RT for Russian television and put them up on YouTube anyway with these false videos. And then they spread their propaganda into Africa and Latin America with Spanish language, Russian channel in Latin America, and telling them, hey, these other people colonized you, maybe you should be on our side. And consequently, a lot of those countries have abstained rather than vote against Russian propaganda and any pushback. They seem to find a workaround.
That's very good. Thank you, Michelle. I understand from the news today that the Russians are sending a boatload of oil to Cuba. Now, I've also heard that the Chinese have been sending solar panels to Cuba. And if anybody can confirm that, that would be very interesting. I mean, the best thing on earth would be to send solar panels to Cuba and end the embargo, and then we'd see if their system of government really works. Donald Smith, and then Myla Reeson and Mike Hersh. I'm grateful for this because we try to do on GREEP things that other people don't do. No one else seems to be discussing the possibility that Russia could have incentivized Trump to attack Iran. He's the big winner. Follow the money, for God's sakes. Who's the only country that has really benefited from the war in Iran? It's Russia. And I guarantee you that Putin was had the brain power to sit down and say, well, if the United States, if I can get Donald to attack Iran, they'll shut the gates of the Straits of Hormuz, and look what's happened to oil prices. That's not exactly rocket science. It's something to think about. Donald Smith, Mike Hersh, and then we're gonna keep going here. All right, Donald, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So I don't like Putin, and he's a brutal dictator, but the U.S. is lying a lot about the background to the war in Ukraine and about how the CIA engineered it. I can give you hundreds of quotes, or I would say scores of quotes. I should say scores of quotes from diplomats, politicians, documenting this. I don't have the time to do it. If you gave me 20 minutes, I could present a lot of evidence would probably blow your mind.
Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat, please. And here is a brilliant posting. People on the radio won't see it. China invests in a bright future for Cuba, dated March 11th, about how they're shipping solar panels into Cuba. And I got to say, the one good thing.
Harvey, are you not letting you interrupted me? You don't want me to speak.
Go ahead. Go ahead and continue. Go ahead.
Okay, I mean, it's really the voices of like Jeffrey Sachs, Medea Benjamin, and there are a lot of others who have explained this better than I can. I'm not a good speaker, though I think I can write. Ro Khanna tweeted at one point that the U.S. has been complicit in the rehabilitation and spread of neo-Nazis in Ukraine. A former Jack Matlock, who was a U.S. ambassador, I think he was the U.S. ambassador to Soviet Union. He said, "Why don't we understand that trying to remove Ukraine from Russian influence and put military bases there would be, in their case, absolutely unacceptable and worthy of defense?" And he said, Ukrainians are dominated in their thinking by neo-Nazis. We tend to ignore that, or when Putin points it out, say he's lying. He's not lying. I have scores of articles in mainstream media about how the U.S. armed the Nazis, the Azov battalion in Ukraine, and then even though Putin, of course, Zelensky's not Nazi, but there are a lot of the Azov battalion was merged into the Ukrainian army, and the CIA overthrew the government there in 2014. Victoria Nuland was caught on phone choosing the government. Another ambassador, U.S. ambassador, said the U.S. engineered the 2014 coup, and I could go on for I could give a presentation of all these quotes about this.
Well, this is an important discussion that nobody else is having. So I'm going to go to Mike Hersh, Howie Hawkins, and then we need to go to Roger Rapoport because I know he's on a short time frame, and Mila, but then we got to go because Roger's on a short one. Here, go ahead, Mike, Howie, and Mila, and then we'll go to Roger.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonny, and we really appreciate hearing that there's more to the situation maybe than our media are reporting or our government is reporting. It's absolutely very valuable. I want to point out that Russia sees us as an adversary. We see Russia as an adversary, and it would make sense to me for them to do everything that they can to screw us up and mess us up to make it so we couldn't imperil Putin and his regime. That's exactly what they're trying to do. And I've done research to show that Russia is behind a lot of the disinformation and divisive campaigns, including the trans panic and a bunch of other nonsense in the West. And xenophobia, anti-immigration hysteria, Islamophobia, because Russia sees chaos in the West as advantageous to them. Obviously, we see chaos in Russia as advantageous to us. So this isn't a moral value. I'm just saying, let's be wide awake and understand that Putin is doing all he can to disrupt and catastrophize the United States and Europe. And that's what's going on.
Let's remember also that as in the bigger picture, the U.S. and Russia may be adversaries, but Trump and Putin have a very special relationship, and it runs through Jeffrey Epstein. And that is not conspiracy theory. We know that Epstein was close to both Trump and Putin, and that Putin and Epstein laundered American money through Trump, Russian money through Trump. And nobody's gotten to the bottom of that one yet. Howie, Hawkins, Mila, and then I'm going to go to Roger.
Well, I think the right wing we need to be worried about, the fascists we need to be worried about, are the fascists around Trump in power in this country. And they are in alliance with Putin and Netanyahu and Orban and all these far right. It's a far right fascist international. The far right in Ukraine in 2019, the last election, the far right parties got less than 2% of the vote. They're not a factor. They're a much smaller factor than they are in the United States. And the only imperialist army that's invading Ukraine is Russia's, with a little help from Iran and North Korea and China. And this thing about Victoria Nuland, if you know the context of that tape, she and Ambassador Piat were talking about who they would recommend to Yanukovych, the guy who ended up fleeing to Russia, he should appoint for prime minister in the parliament. And they recommended this guy named Yatsenyuk. They didn't even know that Yanukovych had already asked Yatsenyuk, and Yatsenyuk said no.
Okay.
So, it didn't have the influence. And finally, this proxy war thing. If it's a proxy war, and Trump and Putin are on the same side now, who is Ukraine a proxy for? I mean, it's ridiculous. That whole narrative has collapsed.
Well, we're going to continue to visit this because nobody else is, But I cannot help but think that if you follow the money, somebody had a hand here, and his name is Putin. Mila, and then we're going to go to Roger with some breaking news from the nukes in Michigan. But go ahead, Mila Reeson, please.
Just real quickly, there's a publication called Power Magazine that has been reporting on the help that China has been providing to Cuba with respect to developing solar electricity in Cuba. And just in this past year, they've tripled the amount China has specifically, tripled the amount of solar electricity in Cuba. It was very low before. Now it's over 20%, increasing to 30. There was a delegation the weekend before this last one where a number of people arrived in Cuba. Many of them brought solar panels because of this oil embargo. So yes, China is helping. And according to Power Magazine, they have committed to creating as many as 100 what they call solar parks in Cuba over the next few years. So that's my report.
Well, I tell you, thank you for that. I'm surprised they let the solar panels through the embargo. I mean, if you're going to embargo anything on Cuba, it would be solar panels. But the one good thing that I can credit Elon Musk for is that after one of the many hurricanes wiped out Puerto Rico for the umpteenth time, Elon Musk sent solar panels to the biggest hospital in San Juan. And it saved many lives. They hooked up these solar panels and got this hospital going that people were dying in. And thank you for that, Elon Musk. I will say also that the solar, and we have to be careful of this because I've been in the Caribbean talking to people about solar. It makes total sense for the Caribbean to go 100% solar, but you have to maintain the panels. The experience in Puerto Rico is they got a bunch of panels, including these ones at the hospital, but then they deteriorated. They were not taken, the connections weren't maintained, the panels weren't kept clean. You cannot just throw solar panels in a third world country and expect them to last without being maintained. So thank you, Cuba, for sending those in. I hope we don't read tomorrow that an American boat has sunk a Chinese ship bringing solar panels to Cuba. God help us, but nonetheless. Okay, so listen, we're at 2:40 California time. We have 89 people with us, and we have Roger Rapoport, who's in the middle of a family reunion, but has agreed to come and give us some quick news on a breaking story. We've been following the attempt to restart the Palisades reactor in Western Michigan. And Roger now has a breaking story about that. Roger, you want to tell us what happened?
Okay, so those of you who've been following Palisades know that this is the attempt, the only attempt ever to restart a reactor that was closed for economic and safety reasons. This reactor is located just outside South Haven, Michigan, on the Lake Michigan shoreline. It was closed in 2022 by a very experienced nuclear power plant operator, Energy, for both safety and financial reasons. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, working with then Secretary of Energy, former Governor of Michigan, Jennifer Granholm, and the Biden administration, received several billion, licensed several $1 billion to restart this reactor that does not meet any of the current safety standards for light water reactors anywhere in the world. And the Trump administration, which has doubled down on this, has not only appropriated money to restart this reactor, but allowed the company that's doing it, Holtec, which has never operated a nuclear power plant reactor or built one, is a nuclear waste specialist. They received $3 billion in state and federal money. And on Friday, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission released a very lengthy report required of the operator prior to restarting the reactor. That is a detailed operational assessment of the plant's steam generators. And in this report, Holtec, the operator, made it incredibly clear that this plant cannot operate on a normal cycle. And the reason is that the steam generator tubes that are central to these degraded steam generators, which are the heart of the whole operation, have been degrading at such a rapid rate that they can't faithfully predict that it can sustain an 18-month operating cycle. So what that means is two things. They're going to shorten the period of operation that they propose, and more important, and this is typical of a restart of any kind, they're going to operate it at a low power level. So that means two things. Number one, the plant is going to have more shutdowns, shorter operating time, and at least at the beginning, it's going to be operating at lower power. All of this is because of the fact that the report itself indicates that stress corrosion cracking is expected to continue growing. This is Holtec's own words during operation, and these degradation mechanisms are now the primary limiting factor and how long the plant can be online. While it doesn't have a specific numerical forecast, it makes clear that this process is going to persist. As a result, they're going to have to shut down to repair or remove from service tubes that are not operating correctly. And Alan Blinn, who is the former nuclear industry executive with over 40 years experience, who was the engineering manager for the plant for 8 years, says that the plant may not be able to operate, but only for shorter periods with increasing maintenance demands and uncertainty about future performance. And this analysis that Holtec has done, remember, they have never operated a nuclear power plant before. So it isn't like they're dealing with this on a basis of their own operating experience. Their modeling concludes that the safety margins can be maintained. However, this approach does not eliminate the underlying issue, which is that degradation, a significant increase, has been incorporated into the model rather than fully being resolved. And there's something else really important about this. This is not a one-time issue. The data indicates a pattern, Blinn says, that each future cycle is likely to uncover more degradation, requiring more repairs, and potentially further limiting how long the plant can run. So there'll be more outages, reduced predictability in power operation, and this is extremely important to the financial community because Holtec is one of the first companies that is also going ahead right now and beginning to work on small modular reactors, a different type of reactor that doesn't have all the shielding and protection and so forth and all the regulation that the light water reactors have. So here you have the operator itself telling the financial community as they're getting ready to launch a $10 billion IPO that would hopefully pay the bills for not only Palisades, but also for these new reactors, that they're not really sure whether they can deliver the power that's going to pay back the loans that they got from the federal government. And you can only guess who is going to have to cover those loans, because guess what? When Holtec's down and Palisades is down, that means they're not selling power and they have to buy it on the spot market. And as we know, the spot market for energy, particularly gas, which is very important, has been skyrocketing because of what's going on at the Straits of Hormuz and in Bahrain and other places that provide the energy that we're going to need for this. So in other words, that means the cost of the power that they're going to have to substitute for the nuclear plant is going to be on the spot market. And that means the ratepayers and ultimately both the Michigan and federal governments that have floated the loans for this are on the hook, because remember, Palisades and Holtec do not have the ability to weather the financial impact of this. So as a result of this, when the markets are looking at this, and remember, the market for light water reactor construction has collapsed over the last 25 years due to cost constraints and long overpromising. So this is, and Harvey can double down on this, this so-called low power operation is exactly what happened at the Fermi plant, where they didn't tell the world for 8.5 years that there was a significant safety issue, meltdown related issue. And they basically didn't allow the public to know for 8.5 years that they really weren't able to operate the plant. They basically had to shut it down after this low power situation. So in effect, Holtec has conceded itself in a filing with the NRC that number one, plan is 2 years behind schedule. Number two, that the cracking is going to continue. Number three, that they're going to have to shorten the operating cycles. Number four, there are going to be more shutdowns. And of course, that means the power that this plant was supposedly going to provide is not going to be available. And there is no fix for this except to build two new steam generators, which are not available on the spot market, meaning they're not, you can't just buy them. And that's 3 to 5 years of delays. So for all intensive purposes, this means that everything that Kevin Kamps and the critics, like Alan Blinn and many other qualified experts have been saying is that number one, Holtec does not know what it's doing. Number two, we're paying for their mistakes. And number three, all this money, Harvey, all this money, the $3 billion, that if it had gone into solar, and wind, which by the way, as we know, the Trump administration is crippling as we speak. What this means is that $3 billion could have built a lot of wind and a lot of solar.
You got it. And the couple of things. First of all, Palisades is the front runner. It's the icebreaker.
Right.
It's the tip of the spear for the alleged reopening.
Yep.
They want to do at 3 Mile Island, at Indian Point, at Duane Arnold, and all these other ridiculous random nuclear plants that they say they're going to reopen. If they don't get past Palisades, the rest of that all falls apart.
And more to
This
the
is
point,
first domino.
the financial markets are right now in the middle of looking at what's going on in the energy industry because of what's going on in the Straits of Hormuz. And the substitute power for this plant is gas and coal and so on. And the point is the cost of that power to replace what's supposedly Holtec was going to pay is high, meaning ratepayers are going to pay more. And if Holtec fails on this, the loans that they got from the government are going to have to be repaid by the taxpayers.
Well, wow, what a surprise. Listen, we're talking with Roger Rapoport about the Palisades nuclear plant. At the top of the hour, in about 10 minutes, we're going to be joined by Jessica Denson, John Bonifaz, John Brakey, Ken Bennett, and we're going to have a really deep discussion on what comes next after No King's Day. I put it second deliberately because we have a full boat, an hour and a half to deal with that, hour and 20 minutes. So stick with us because Jessica Denson is a real pistol, and we're really looking forward to a great discussion about that. We're really honored to have Roger Rapoport and Kevin Kamps and Karl Grossman all with us here. Great heroes of the nuclear movement as we deal with Myla Reese in here. And Myla, you wanted to jump in. And Karl Grossman, Roger, as you know, is a veteran of one of the great low power nightmares at Shoreham, as is Myla at San Onofre and Kevin. So this is a very, very big deal. So let's give it 10
I just
more
want
minutes.
I just want to add one point. Kevin
Yeah.
is with us today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everybody on this call should realize that Kevin Kamps has been calling this right for over 30 years. And I think we all need to honor him today, and Karl and you, Harvey, for all the work you've done.
And Myla.
Everything you've been saying, Kevin, from day one has been borne out. And thank you. And thank you, Karl, and thank you, Harvey, for being right on it all these years.
Oh, and Ace Hoffman's with us too. So the question is, what you're announcing today, Roger, is this the straw that breaks the camel's back?
Yes.
And all this nonsense about starting these old dead reactors, if they don't get past Palisades, they don't get the 3 Mile Island. They don't get to Indian Point. They don't get to Duane Arnold. None of that stuff. So,
Yes.
and Ray McClendon's with us, home of Vodal there. So, Myla, did you want to jump in?
I did. You know,
Oh, you know, by the way, Howie Hawkins is also with us, a great veteran, no nuclear. Okay, go ahead.
right. So, you know, unfortunately, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been doged, and they were weak before, and now I think they might be worthless. Back in I think it was 2016. Southern California Edison had proposed that they run the San Onofre nuclear power plant at low power. Specifically, very similar situation because the tubes in the new generators that they had ordered were cracking and were not holding up, and the only way that they could run it would be at low power. And at that time, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission said, sorry, we don't provide licenses to run at low power. We only provide licenses to run at 100% power.
Yes.
And that was sort of one of the major nails in the coffin, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to see whether this new compromised, even exceedingly more compromised Nuclear Regulatory Commission will even allow Palisades to restart at low power. So
Well, and that's really important, and we'll be following that. The question then becomes, and maybe Karl, having watched what happened at Shoreham, can they actually afford to run this thing at low power? Or is it such a gargantuan money loser that they're going to walk away? I mean, isn't that what they did, Karl, at Karl's muted, at Shoreham? I mean, on the one hand was the licensing, but on the other hand, you know, they're in business. They can't make it. They can't make money running that thing at partial power, can they, Roger?
No.
Well,
Roger,
okay. There you go.
let me ask you, Roger. A while back, you had talked about an initial public offering for Holtec or for Palisades. Is that relevant? Did that happen? Is that something that will also stand in the way of?
Well, if I were in Holtec's shoes, I do exactly what they're doing. I would announce that I'm doing a low power thing, you know, and say, well, you know, the model that you were talking about at San Onofre, and then go up to the market and say, well, yeah, we got it open. We're not making money on it, but who cares? But boy, you should see what we're doing. They're clear cutting as we speak to build to prepare the sites for the SMRs. So yeah, we're not doing that all that much. We're being very safety conscious with Palisades, and they'll use that as an excuse to say, but by the way, the SMRs are really going to take off, and that'll be their way out of the fact that they couldn't get it started. It's a perfect explanation because they don't have any SMRs, and then as soon as they get the money, they
Right.
can sell their stock before anything goes wrong with that. And this is the whole model for all of these SMRs is to get, it's already happening where they're taking the money, and they do the proposal and they say, yeah, this is it. And then they get the IPO going and they get some money and then sell their stock before reality hits,
Wow.
It's a great business
SMR for
model.
everybody is small modular reactors, or as we call them, silly mythological
Right.
ripoffs. But that's okay, Roger. So that really is at least a nail in the coffin for the idea of starting these old big reactors, and this is a win
Yes. The
today.
light water reactor startup idea is not getting off to a very good start. Restart is not getting off to a very good
Okay.
start. The
Kevin
first attempt
Kamps?
to do it, they had $3 billion. They're 2 years behind. Now they're saying in their own words, well, there are going to be a lot of tube failures. We'll have more shutdowns. Every time they shut down, the rates go up. They have to buy on the spot market. Everything's going wrong, period.
So Steve Caruso's been asking if you would put in the chat a link to.
Yes, I'll do it now.
Can we unmute Kevin Kamps?
Go ahead.
Get Kevin Kamps here.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now you're good. Go ahead.
I just, thanks for the kind words, Roger. I just wanted to point out that we've known about the steam generator problems at Palisades since 2006. And we've also known about the lid problems at Palisades since 2006. I'll put the document in the chat. It's the previous owner admitting it to the state of Michigan. So what's incredible is we had a joke on a call earlier today that Holtec missed its layups at Palisades, kind of like Michigan State missed its layups in the March Madness a couple days ago, and they're out. They did not.
You went mute on us here. What happened? Go
Now
ahead.
the problems are so much worse than 20 years ago.
Well, let's hope this is a nail in the coffin. Karl Grossman, you saw this at Shoreham. Is this deja vu all over again?
Well, I'm a little troubled by the notion of low-level radioactivity. I mean, it's like being a little bit pregnant. If fission takes place, there is radiation. With the Shoreham plant on Long Island, what the Long Island Lighting Company decided to do towards the end of the fight was to start up Shoreham with low power testing to irradiate the plant to make it more difficult to end this fight and get the plant closed. And in fact, that low power testing left the Shoreham plant highly radioactive. So again, Holtec saying, well, a low level of power, I don't know how much that is worth in terms of dealing with radioactivity.
Okay, well, here we are. Howie Hawkins, you've seen this before as a veteran no-nuker. I think it's something we welcome. At very least, it's a partial victory. And Howie, you're dealing with that lunatic governor, you and Karl, in New York. What's this going to do there?
Well, if they actually try to build 5 new gigawatts of nuclear power, besides extending 3 Mile Point 1, which is one of the oldest nukes in the country, by another 20 years. That's the news today. They just filed the application, and Trump's going to rubber stamp it. And it has, brittle equipment and cracking in that nuke. They're going to bankrupt the state. The levelized cost of building solar and wind is 1/3 of nuclear. So if we need more power, build renewables. And, I think we're going to win this fight because Hochul's energy economics are as stupid as Trump's military economics in Iran.
Well, that's hard to match, but there we go. We are joined now. And by the way, this discussion of Ukraine and Putin's role in the Iran war, we will continue. We do not meet next week. It's Easter Monday, but in 2 weeks, we're going to go back deep. Howie, I want you to come, please, with us and everybody else. We still have 83 people with us, but we got to get to the bottom. No one else is talking about Ukraine in conjunction with Iran. It's a complete mist in the media, and we've got to deal with it. So a week from next, if you'll join us again, Howie, everybody will be back. Still have 83 people with us. We're joined by MV Ramana who's one of the great experts on renewable energy. And then we're going to go to Dorothy Reich and talk about No King's Day and what comes next. The second hour, we do know that the people who organized this last No King's Day, number 3, have now called for a general strike on May 1st. But a general strike for what? That's the question. So let's discuss that in a few minutes. But I want to bring in MV Ramana. He is a truly great leader in the field of renewables. Professor Ramana, we just had a long discussion about what's happened at the Palisades reactor, which is, oh, by the way, I can't resist. Do you know who lives in Traverse City? Did you know Buttigieg lives in Traverse City? So you guys got to go knock on Buttigieg's door and get him on the no nukes train here. But very quickly, MV Ramana, it's great to have you with us. We're going to have you back another time. We missed your first hour here, but tell us, what is the likelihood that we could actually solarize New York and California and move ahead with renewables, with Solartopia?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I couldn't join you for the first hour. I had other interviews here to carry out. I think the broad answer is obviously the answer is yes, because the solar energy is so plentiful and it has become so cheap that it should be possible. But the challenges primarily, in my opinion, are political. The fossil fuel industry is trying very hard to stay on. The nuclear industry is trying very hard to stay on. And they are, in power in many countries, including in the United States. And they are trying to use whatever levers of power they have to block the sort of expansion of renewables to keep the old systems running.
What do you think, and this is an important question, and what do you think the impact of the Iran war and the Ukraine war are going to have on renewables?
It's going to be a mixed one, right? What we are seeing is, on the one hand, the sort of rational conclusion is that you have to move away from fossil fuels and expand renewables. But these are political decisions which multiple lobbying groups are going to try to influence in their own ways. So, for example, I live here in Canada, and in Canada, the narrative has been, this is Canada's chance to establish itself as a fossil fuel supplier for the world. Let's build a pipeline from Alberta to the West Coast here in British Columbia and export LNG from here to Asia. East Asia, and there'll be a big market there, and so on and so forth, right? So that's one kind of narrative you're hearing. You will hear narratives about how nuclear power is going to offer energy security, and so on and so forth. I've heard, for example, that Taiwan, which shut down all its nuclear plants last year, the last of the nuclear plants last year, is sort of considering reopening one of those nuclear plants, right, in response to what's happening in Iran. So this is something which I think is going to be a political battle, and we have to argue for our side to say, this is actually a call for renewables to be the way we move forward.
Very good, very good. And we're going to continue this in 2 weeks. We want to talk also, we've got Jessica Denson with us, and we're going to be talking about the next step after No Kings. But we also want to address the issue of nuclear power reactors being vulnerable to drones, which is really terrifying, especially somebody living in Southern California. This has been a phenomenal discussion. MV Ramana, we're going to have you in 2 weeks, I hope. We'll schedule that. We'll talk further about the nuclear power plants and the war in Iran. Howie, great to have you with us. Kevin Kamps, Karl, Mila, everybody. We now going to go with Jessica Denson. Jessica, are you there?
I am here. I tried to turn on my own video, but it won't let me.
Do we have John Banner and John Bonner?
There we go.
John is
Yes,
here too.
I'm here. Yes, I am. Hi, Harvey.
So which is which? Which is John? I'm sorry, kidding.
Jessica,
Okay,
start your
listen,
video.
everybody. This is a great. We got now a full hour and 20 minutes to discuss the aftermath, the tidal wave, the tsunami that follows the 8 million plus people who came out to march on Saturday. I'll tell you my own particular story, and then we can rock and roll. I wanted to go local, so I went to Van Nuys. I could not find the march, as you can say that, but my language is restrained. So I went, and I knew there was going to be a march in Topanga Canyon, which I love anyway. So I got in the car, and as I was driving, I heard Bruce live on KPFK radio from Minneapolis. It was really cool. It was great to hear the boss live on my radio driving across the freeways of Southern California. I got to Topanga, and they let me be the last speaker. And I may have been one of the very few in the country who pointed out that this was also the anniversary of the disaster at 3 Mile Island. And I started ranting about nuclear power and no kings, and I got the hook finally, but it was very gratifying. So I may have been the last speaker at the California No Kings Days, No Nukes Days, but here we are now. My understanding is, John and Jessica, that the organizers of this last No Kings #3 have called for a general strike on May 1st. The question is, what are we striking for? What is the goal? I said, Jessica, it's too bad the people on radio can't see you. So I suspected you may want to speak to this. Jessica Denson, what are we striking for?
Well, apparently they don't articulate anything that we're striking for, but if we're doing anything, we have to have demands concretely articulated. I will tell you all have been probably in activism for many years longer than I have. That said, in the year that I have been on the ground and where we are with this lawless criminal regime burning American democracy to the ground, I came out of this weekend. Granted, we had a very successful event, which I will share with you. I will tell you, I'll be brutally honest here, kind of sick of the lack of teeth coming out of the so-called major organizers in this country. And the fact that and I hear this from a lot of people who watch these events and these large No Kings events from a distance. They're like, okay, so what? What was that all about? What did that accomplish? We have to be demanding removal of this administration. John is going to articulate this. He's so much more eloquent about this than I am. But there is one constitutional remedy to get out of this. The remedy is impeachment. The fact that the organizers, let me name names here, Indivisible, Ezra Levin, Leah Greenberg, have not used their massive reach and platform to call for impeachment at this point is honestly, I don't understand it. It seems completely unexplainable and unforgivable. I will tell you, I watched the Minnesota rally on Saturday night after my event, just kind of tuned in and happened to tune in to the point where they were introducing Ezra and Leah. And they literally said, I couldn't believe this, because there have been so many people fighting on the ground that have been wanting teeth to come out of this movement, wondering why these larger organizations are not doing more. And the introduction to them literally said, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but not a lot. It basically said, these people are the leaders. Fall in line. If you think you have a better idea, don't do it. If they want you to just show up and fold chairs, just show up and fold chairs for them, because they're the geniuses, they're the experts, they're strategizing behind the scenes. Just hold on and wait for the instructions that they give you.
Oh my God.
This is really dangerous. This is really dangerous. Like, I don't know how else to raise an alarm about the crisis that we're dealing with in this country. But I talked about controlled opposition a few weeks ago, and after this weekend, I have never felt more like the major movements in this country are acting like controlled opposition than ever before. And I don't know if that's really what's happening, but for God's sakes, we've got to do better.
I agree. Now, there's John, I'm going to get you a second. Dorothy Reich, are you on the call here, Dorothy Reich?
And Sonny, could you introduce the guests for people who don't know them?
Small detail. But Dorothy Reich, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So listen, I want to introduce you to somebody who is the last thing on earth that would have gone for that. This is Dorothy Reich. She lives in Topanga. She has been an organizer for quite a while, and she was my co-demonstrator in Topanga on Saturday. Dorothy, you had this great poster. Can you show that
Yeah.
poster?
You have it. I don't know how to screen
Oh, okay. I
share,
think
so
I
you
sent
have
it
it.
to Steve. What does it call for, Dorothy?
So I just made up this little meme. It said, Iranian leader demands U.S. regime change before any negotiations can take place. And a couple of my friends made little posters of it, and then I called this incredible artist Nancy Ohaney, and she made a poster for it.
Well, let me see if I can find
And
it.
I think that we, Ezra and Leah are doing what they do. If we don't like what they do, then we have to do it ourselves. And we can't. We don't have the whatever. I don't know where they're getting their funding. I don't know how they're getting their organizing. I know that they worked in the government, so they kind of know what gets to the elected officials, what they pay attention to. But they're doing it, and we're not doing it on our own. So we have to try to influence them. They're having a meeting in 2 weeks. They're all the indivisibles are having meetings, and they're going to try to get a consensus. What's next? I think we not only need impeachment. I think impeachment is the tip of the iceberg. We need full-on regime change. It doesn't matter if Trump is gone, if Russell Vought is still there, Stephen Miller is still there. All these maniacs are still there. They all have to go. And I think we need the world to help us. Not just the Iranians, we need the Europeans, we need the Chinese, we need everybody except the Russians, obviously, who love him.
And the Hungarians.
We need to put out a call for help because we can't deal with this ourselves. Yeah. Topanga was incredible, as always.
That was Dorothy and I, our view at the Topanga gathering right after.
And people of all ages. You can see little children, grandmas and grandpas, and everybody in between, artists, writers.
So Sonny, do that intro when you can, please.
Oh, yes. So actually, you know what? Jessica Denson and John Bonifaz, you introduce yourselves, please. I could not do you justice. Jessica Denson, you are a mind boggler, and John Bonifaz and I have been working since together since Ohio 2004.
So before we move on, let me just say there is a Remove the Regime organization. We need to join them.
That's mine.
That's yours. Well, then you need to try to.
The phrase I
get involved in Indivisible and bring your.
Listen, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to be, I don't think, like I said, I'm here. You're really lucky because I'm here like with no holds barred today. I just don't think that we have time as a country individually, the death that is going on. We got 3 times as many people in concentration camps in this country as there were in Nazi Germany in 1939. Like, I don't know what else to do but to lay it all out on the line right now. And then if there's people,
I don't know what to do either.
If there's people in this movement that are in the way, I happen, I got off the phone with a Senate staffer who now lives in Australia last night, a friend of mine who thinks that there's a lot more pernicious, malicious things going on behind the scenes with certain organizations who are keeping us from the actual remedy. And like you said, Dorothy, impeachment is the tip of the spear. Trump's got to go, the rest of the cabal's got to go, and then these people have to go to prison. I mean, this is just the tip of the spear, but it does have to happen first, right? These people are not going to prosecute themselves. So Remove the Regime, just to give you guys a sense of what I've been doing, is I started my own
Your name is Jessica Denson, and your group is called?
The Removal Coalition. But Remove the Regime is kind of the movement that we started under the Removal Coalition umbrella, having these protests, mass protests. We had the biggest ever lobbying day for impeachment back in September when Congress came back into session. Then we had tens of thousands on the National Mall. In November, John was there for a press conference the day before where we got Al Green to promise new articles of impeachment. He forced that second vote in December. As the result of our movement, we saw a 77% surge in support for impeachment because of our pressure and endless, relentless demand-oriented action that we put into this movement. So these are, this is a movement that has concrete demands. And the fact that we have these, supposed leaders of these No Kings coalitions, you told me to talk to Leah Greenberg or to talk to Indivisible. Let me tell you what happened in the lead up to this No Kings 3. 50-51 National, which is a much more, as you all know, decentralized kind of movement. A lot of people that are very new to this space. I myself am new to this space, okay? Like I said, I started this a year ago on the ground, protesting the certification of this illegal presidency with my organization, 14th Now. Donald Trump is an adjudicated insurrectionist, illegal president from day one. Congress should have never let him get into into the White House again.
Supreme Court should never have let him.
Well, the Supreme Court had a really shitty decision in Trump v. Anderson, but John and I have talked about this ad nauseum. It didn't preclude Congress from doing their job on January 6, 2025 and raising an objection. It didn't preclude that. So anyway, I started there. I saw all the protests happening. There was, no teeth. And so I formed the Removal Coalition to try to get people to bring these demands to the space. 50-51, a lot of people like me who got into this protesting just in this administration, at least on the ground protesting. And they came into our coalition at the Removal Coalition and said, yes, we agree with you. Donald Trump needs to be impeached and convicted and removed. When they announced No Kings 3, I was honestly gobsmacked, shocked, but I guess not surprised that they announced a third mass mobilization that was going to be the largest protest in American history, literally without a demand. I couldn't believe it. I frankly couldn't believe it. And so I went to them. I went to our partners in 50-51 because they're in the removal, or they're in the No Kings Coalition. I was never invited into those rooms, but they are. And I said, would you at 50-51 endorse my call for every No Kings organizer? And this is an attempt. I don't have the reach of this in their organization, but I said, would you endorse my call for organizers to adopt the demand, impeach, convict, remove on No Kings 3? And this went back and forth for a good week and a half, 2 weeks. Ultimately, they came back to me and they said, we voted it down. I do think there was influence from Indivisible and maybe some other large groups there that are very, very hesitant to say the word impeachment. And they did not only vote it down, but 50-51 left the coalition over this. Mm-hmm. So there is something very odd going on in this space where they are being told, and you say Leah and Ezra, yes, they worked in Congress. They know a certain way to influence politicians, but there is not one right way to influence politicians. I just gave you a statistic of how successful we were just by naming and shaming the people who have not come out on the right side of impeachment. They have an incredible platform that they could be using. I mean, can you imagine if the No Kings Coalition called this May Day event and said the demand for this May Day event is impeachment and removal? Can you imagine how powerful that would be? But they won't do it. They won't do it. And so what do we have? We had a nice community gathering day on Saturday, largely across the country, with the exception of, some, and I'm not downplaying any real progress that was made on that day in the terms of meeting each other and feeling good and all of those things. But I'm just saying it's not meeting the moment of what is desperately needed in this country right now.
I agree with you. There's a group called Refuse Fascism. They've been at this since 2016, calling for impeachment of Trump the first time and impeachment there. And they've always been small, but they've been right the whole time. And I don't know what to do except to I can go to my Indivisible meeting in Topanga, and I guess that those of us who have access to going to Indivisible meetings, they're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks, they said, and they want input on what the next step is. So I'd imagine that those of us who go to these meetings have to say what we think the next step is: impeachment and regime change. And I think maybe they think just by saying no kings, they imply impeachment. I don't know what's in their minds.
It's deliberate. I'm going to tell you, it's deliberate because they know They know what they could be calling for now, and they are not. And that's why I brought to you that example of us going to them as a coalition and saying, will you endorse this? And they didn't. They know that they could be making that call.
Let's go to John Bonifaz.
Yeah,
John
we need to get
Bonifaz
John in.
John is in the Hammersmith, which, by the way, I've been working for more than 40 years to change the name of Amherst, Massachusetts. We should not have a town in this country. He was the inventor of germ warfare.
Yes, he was.
So my candidate for your town has been Emily, from Emily Dickinson.
Yes, there you go.
That would be great. Okay, go ahead, John Bonifaz. John's a great lawyer. He's been on the election protection case for since before Jessica was born. And go ahead, John, please.
This is true.
Good to be with you, Harvey and Jessica and everyone. So my name's John Bonifaz. I'm a constitutional lawyer. I'm the co-founder and president of Free Speech for People. We're a national nonprofit organization dedicated to defending our democracy and our constitution across the country. We were launched on the day of the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in Citizens United v. FEC in 2010, and for more than 15 years, we've been on the front lines fighting for our republic with many of you. We do have a campaign, Impeach-TrumpAgain.org, which we launched on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2025, because Donald Trump, when he took that oath, was already in violation of the Foreign and Domestic Emoluments Clauses, and there were corrupt practices engaged in the 2024 election, which we documented on the site. Of course, since that time, we have been building the case for impeachment, demonstrating all the abuses of power that Donald Trump has committed. We're now up to 27 grounds for impeachment at impeachtrumpagain.org, all of which have extreme amount of detail in there. So it's a 66-page long document if you want to download it. And I think it'd be great if we could have some public readings of it across the country. It would take hours to do, but people need to hear the case as to why this lawless president needs to be impeached and removed. And I fully agree with Dorothy. It's not just Trump, it's others, and we name other key Trump officials who need to be facing impeachment proceedings. I will say that in 2017, Free Speech for People was the first organization, along with Roots Action, that launched an impeachment campaign against Trump at that time, because once again, he refused to divest from his business interests around the world, and he was already in violation of the Foreign Domestic Emoluments Clauses in January 2017. What we found in that campaign is that many of these groups that we're talking about, like Indivisible, Move On, they waited. They waited years, actually, before they jumped on board. And largely, it was because the elites in the Democratic Party weren't on board. And so, unfortunately, some of these groups take their cues from those elites. When Nancy Pelosi signaled that they were now going to finally go ahead and start that impeachment process against Ukraine, the Ukraine scandal, which was a very narrow focus. There were many other grounds that we had identified, but they solely focused on the Ukraine scandal. Then a lot of these groups came on board in a full way, and the train got moving with them. But, the history on this, at least from that time period, I think demonstrates that we just need to keep building this case and this movement, as Jessica and her team have been doing, as many of you have been doing, and they will come on board when they recognize that they have no choice but to come on board. There was an article that Punchbowl News published just a few days ago, and I'm not a big reader of it, but I tend to try to track where there's an impeachment discussion. And they went ahead and they interviewed a number of people in Congress, all Democrats, all of whom said, we're not doing this. We're not going to do this. So they need to keep feeling the pressure, and that's what this campaign's about.
Well, it's my job as a history teacher to remind everybody there have been 4 impeachments in American history. The first was Andrew Johnson, who was a horrible guy, and they should have removed him. The second was Bill Clinton. I won't comment. And then the third and fourth were Donald Trump. There was a close call with Richard Nixon, but he ducked out of town before they could impeach him. But remember, impeachment is not removal. I mean, Trump's been impeached twice. He's still in there. Clinton finished his term, as did Andrew Johnson. And so it's got to be impeachment and removal. Impeachment is only an indictment, as everybody by now, I hope, knows. Mike Hersh, you want to jump in with John Bonfaz and Jessica Denson?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonny. Always great to see you, Jessica, and great to see you again, John. I'm getting flashbacks from when we were doing After Downing Street, and we really thought that we had a regime on the ropes because they had literally talked about lying us into war in Iraq. And now, because we weren't able to make that stick back then, Trump is coming along and using all of that as precedent. And we've seen a huge erosion of constitutional power under the Article 1. And like you said, the only constitutional remedy is impeachment and removal. We've come close, as Sonny, as you've said, but we've had a number of presidents who've violated war powers, who've done a lot of other unspeakable things. And because we failed to stand up to it before, we're where we are now. And I think Brazil got it right. When you have a fascist who's committing crimes against their constitution and petty crimes and crimes of personal enrichment, the whole gamut of things that Trump and many other people in his regime are doing. We have to stand up and deal with it. And Jessica, I'm very, very disappointed to hear that these people who are claiming to be opposition aren't really opposing anything. I mean, it's great to get together. It's great to have a show of strength and disapproval, but where does it lead? So John and Jessica, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Very quickly, again, as a historian, I want to jump in and let everybody know how deep this goes. Profiles in Courage, the book that John Kennedy wrote that got him the Pulitzer Prize, right?
Tiny book.
Huh? Small
I said
book.
it's very thin, very thin.
And they people don't think he wrote it, but there's a chapter in there about the impeachment of Andrew Johnson. And the argument against impeachment was that there was a legal pretext. You know, Andrew Johnson should have been removed. And the Profile in Courage chapter talks about a young freshman senator from Nebraska named Ross. And he, despite great pressure, voted to not remove Johnson. And his was the deciding vote, a horrible precedent. If they had removed Andrew Johnson in 1867, it would be a different country. But because of this guy's one vote, who John Kennedy profiled in Courage, we never removed a president. And we still haven't removed a president. Clinton should have been removed, Trump twice, and Andrew Johnson. Nixon had the good sense to leave town. So, but that's what we're up against. It's deeply ingrained in the American tradition to not remove the president. And that's something we're going to have to overcome here. Steve Caruso. Steve?
Yeah, you got to give me a heads up here, buddy.
Okay, and then Dorothy.
And also,
Wright,
Sonny, if you could let them answer my question, that would be great too.
Yes, answer his question, please.
Do me a favor, Mike. Just repeat the question one more time.
Well, just that we've been moving towards an imperial presidency for generations, and we've been ratcheting closer and closer, and it's disappointing that we have a resistance that's not resisting anything, and what can we do about it? That's really, I guess, what I'm trying to get at.
I'll let John tag team on this because he's very good at articulating what he would like to see done in Congress on a daily basis. But you mentioned Brazil. I just want to say the other country that puts us to absolute shame is South Korea. Their president tried to institute martial law. The opposition leader in that country literally climbed over barricades, live streamed his way back into the legislature. That ended immediately, and their insurrectionist attempted president is now sitting in prison for life. These people put us to shame. They put us to absolute shame. Our legislators right now should be filing and forcing votes. John's going to get on this, forcing votes on articles of impeachment every single day. Like you said, like the fact that we've gotten to this point, and I know John and both of us are a little bit short on time, but I know you wanted to talk about the election protection before we leave, without even having correctly verified that this man even won in 2024 is beyond obscene. Our rights have been violated by this regime in so many ways. And what simply has to be done is we have to match the criminal flagrant, repeated lawlessness with the same breakneck speed of constitutional enforcement. And if impeachment hasn't worked yet in this country, well, we damn well are living in unprecedented times, aren't we? It is time for some unprecedented remedies. And if we fully embrace the impeachment fight like the American resistance should be doing right now, we could hijack the narrative to that end and actually get the job done.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I certainly agree, Mike Hersh, with your point about the danger of the imperial presidency. As you know, I was right there with you in calling for the impeachment of George W. Bush based on that illegal and unconstitutional war against Iraq. And I do think every time we do not exercise this power and remove these lawless presidents when they engage in abuses of power and impeachable offenses, then we build up to the point where we now have what we're facing today. That being said, I do want to emphasize there is a resistance movement that's pushing for impeachment and removal. Jessica's very much a part of it. We're very much a part of it at Free Speech for People. 1 million people plus have signed on to our petition at Impeach Trump Again. And I want to be clear, they want to impeach and remove. They don't just want to impeach. So there is a lot of energy. And the fact that, as Jessica highlighted, we saw a 77% increase in members of Congress voting on articles of impeachment from June to December of last year. In June, Congressman Green introduced articles of impeachment, which we helped to draft at Free Speech for People, which dealt with the illegal bombing of Iran then. And he had 78 of his colleagues join him, 79 total members of Congress. Then in December, he introduced new articles of impeachment dealing with Trump's threat to execute members of Congress and his intimidation and threats against federal judges. We also worked with him on those articles and drafting them. And that's where we saw 140 members come on board. And we saw 45 members engage in saying they're voting present. And why did they do that? Because right before the vote, Hakeem Jeffries, Catherine Clark, Pete Aguilar, the leadership on the Democratic side, put out a statement saying they're going to vote present. They're not going to vote no. They're not going to vote to stop the articles, but they're going to vote present. And the reason they said is because impeachment is a very complicated matter. It requires thousands of hours of testimony, multiple witnesses, many weeks and months of hearings. I mean, this is the claim they're making as to why they're voting present. We know in plain sight that these abuses of power don't require thousands of hours of testimony, multiple witnesses, months and months of hearings. We've documented these abuses, kidnapping people off the streets, sending them to foreign torture prisons, launching us into illegal and unconstitutional military conflicts, unleashing ICE as a private army, terrorizing our communities all across the country, engaging in attacking our judiciary, multiple defiance of multiple court orders across the country, rampant corruption in the White House, the foreign and domestic emoluments violations, treating the Oval Office as a profit-making enterprise at the public expense. I could go on, right? We've got it all documented there at Impeach Trump Again, but these don't require hours and hours, days and days, hearings, into ad nauseum to determine that this is a lawless president who needs to be impeached and removed along with his co-conspirators. So what we have to do as the resistance movement that's fighting for impeachment and removal is we have to keep making our voices heard and building this up. It is true that at the national level, Indivisible is not on board. But I'll tell you, there are many Indivisible chapters with which we work who don't take their cues from national, and they're on board, and they're doing impeachment messaging in their rallies. We identified at least 15. I know it's not, the bulk of them at all, but 15 different events across the country where they endorsed and brought forward the impeachment messaging. So there's more work to be done, no question, but I think our focus needs to stay on the fact we need this demand, and it has to be grounded in what the Constitution requires.
Whoa, good work, John. Fantastic. Let's go back to Dorothy Reich, and then we'll go to Donald.
I just, we're leaving out an important word when we say impeach and remove. We're leaving out convict. And that's what stops it all, because we need 2/3 of the Senate in order to convict. And you have to convict before you remove. And I don't know what's in the minds of our congressional leaders, but I would imagine that they just think that it's a waste of time because we don't have the Senate to convict. So I don't know what,
Of course they
John,
think.
what you have to say
Well,
about, you know,
yeah,
how what we're going to do about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to go back, right? So when there was an impeachment trial after January 6th, you know, we have to remember that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar wanted to introduce articles of impeachment the day after the insurrection on January 7th. And she was told by Speaker Pelosi, no, we're not doing it that quickly. Imagine if she had been allowed to push for that and there had been a vote right away within 24 hours after the insurrection. That would have meant the trial would have happened much sooner. I'm not convinced that we would have seen the exact same result. We might have seen other senators in the face of all that violence that had just occurred, the nation saw it, but instead we waited weeks. And then what happened? We had the trial. Donald Trump was not in office anymore. Joe Biden was the president. And you had the presentation by the impeachment managers on the floor of the Senate at that trial. And then Congressman Raskin, who was leading the impeachment case, said, we're now going to call witnesses. And immediately, Lindsey Graham got up there, Senator Lindsey Graham said, well, if they're calling witnesses, we're calling witnesses. And then they took a dramatic recess. All of a sudden, they stopped the whole thing and they went into their back rooms. And this has been well documented in terms of what happened. Senator Chris Coons, who's close to Joe Biden, he went into that room with the impeachment managers and he told Raskin, we're not doing this. We're done. You know, the president has his agenda. It doesn't include this. We need to get this over with. We need to just have the vote. And that was a colossal mistake. Trump is out of power. We then should have had weeks and weeks of testimony on this. We should have had all the witnesses come forward, all the police officers who were injured. We should have had all of that be presented. And instead, they just punted. Raskin went back in and said, oh, we withdraw. We're not going to call witnesses. So again, you know, it is true that we have not seen the conviction yet occur, either in that impeachment trial or any other. But if we push for the right, way to do this, which is to move with all the emphasis on all the high crimes that have been committed and to require, that trial be a full trial, I'm not going to say there's no way there's conviction. I mean, there's so much overwhelming evidence the public will see that they already know of, but many more will see with that kind of trial. It will be very, very hard to say we don't get to 67. But there's no reason why we shouldn't start that case now and require that vote, that indictment now. You know, you don't say, well, we're never going to indict because you're never going to convict. No, in this particular moment, we have to say we're going to move this forward now because that's what the Constitution demands.
You're 100% right. And there's one name you got to remember, Katie Johnson. Okay, I see some blank stares. She is the woman who testified 4 times in front of the FBI that she was forced to service Donald Trump when she was 13 years old. And there is new confirmation on that. And if you've seen the video of her, it is absolutely the most horrifying thing. I have daughters. It was horrifying. Anyway, start there if you want. Jessica, did you want to jump in? We'll go to Donald Smith.
I just want to say one thing about what John said about all of the support for this movement. I don't believe that this is not where the people are. That's my right. Great frustration is that I think that the 8 million, if that's the real number that was out in the streets yesterday, would all agree with us that Trump needs to be impeached, convicted, and removed now. And the frustration is that the organizers who, frankly, by the way, came in after the rest of us had been on the ground for months and said, oh, look at this protest movement. This looks really good. Let's get in on it.
That's
came in and hijacked the mass protests and have been hamstringing the messaging. Not because the people aren't there, but because for whatever reason, they will not articulate these demands. So I just wanted to reiterate, I think the people are with us and we are massively in the majority and have been very successful.
Well, let me ask you very quickly, we have a woman who comes on with us periodically. It's great. Her name is Jenny Gage, and she was a Mormon and a MAGA. What is your sense of the MAGA movement playing in on the impeachment? It's like people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and so forth. Where do you think the far right or the former far right is coming in on impeachment? Blank stares.
I mean, listen, I think this is what I always say. I said, can we get all the Democrats so I can get past them and get to the Republicans? Because that's going to be so much fun. We have so many opportunities to peel off Republicans into this once we get just the full Democratic caucus on board. Maybe we should start now. I think there's plenty of opportunity here. There's so much vulnerability and exposure of hypocrisy to be done with Republicans on any one of these impeachable offenses. So I think there's a great opportunity there. We just haven't exploited it yet.
Yeah, I do think the three areas where there is real opportunity to build that kind of support on that side is around the Epstein files. It's around this war against Iran, which is another regime change war that he said he wasn't going to get the country into. And then the third is around the corruption. I mean, he's literally, milking off of all the deals he's making. He and his family, they're making billions of dollars at the public expense. I think all that together is a case that can be made to the American people across the political spectrum.
And just for your reference, Donald Trump is now the Trump family has personally invested in nuclear power. And they have bought into a fusion company. And this is the guy who's controlling the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. But I know you have in your address book, and your next call really should be to Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Hey, Sonny, can we get to Donald Smith? He's got a lot.
Somebody's talking in the background.
And I got stuck behind. I wanted to ask John and Jessica if you guys could focus more on the fact that it doesn't take the trial. I mean, have some kind of write-out program or something that explains it in detail and makes it simple for people so it doesn't have to be a big deal with this long, drawn-out stuff that we've been through a million times, because that's the easiest way to get it done, right?
Well, they've always had a trial. There was a trial.
Has to be a trial. The Senate has to vote to convict and remove. That is the process.
The House requires a simple majority, and the Senate requires 2/3 to remove.
I think the biggest misconceptions are actually in the House process, because number one, people don't understand Rule 9, that any member can bring up articles of impeachment to a vote all the time. So many people think that Democrats have to be in a majority to even do that. And the other misconception there is that they think there's got to be some drawn out investigation in the House, which does not have to happen. It can come to a vote immediately.
Right. But you do have to have John, being a lawyer, knows that you do have to have a semblance of a trial. And yes. Okay. Donald Smith, someone's talking in the background. If you can stop that. We still have 78 people with us. This call has the longest attention span of the entire United States. So you guys are great. Donald Smith, go ahead.
So Dorothy and you, Harvey, both covered part of what I was going to say, that the opponents of doing impeachment now would say, why would we waste our time? The Senate is never going to convict. You need 2/3. They couldn't even convict when the Democrats had a bigger proportion of the Senate. Now the Republicans control the Senate even more. Why should you waste your time doing this? And then I wanted to ask a question. In the House, the Republicans have a small majority in the House, so they get to control a lot of what sort of investigations are done. And so they still need a majority of House members to approve starting an investigation committee. Is that going to happen? And there's a book called Unchecked: The Untold Story Behind Congress's Botched Impeachment of Trump. And it blames basically Nancy Pelosi for dragging her feet on the impeachment of Trump. She didn't want to do it because she didn't want to lose swing district seats. But the main question is about that argument that you need 2/3, so why waste your time? And then the Republicans control most of the rules in the House.
Yeah, all right. So let's deal with that. First of all, nothing stops. Thank you, Donald, for laying all that out. Nothing stops members in the so-called opposition party, who are in the minority right now in the House, in conducting shadow hearings all across the country. They can be doing that. They can be showing up all across the country and laying out the case for impeachment. And they're not. They're not doing any of that. Now, I do want to highlight that at a certain moment in January of this year, Congresswoman Robin Kelly introduced articles of impeachment against Kristi Noem. This was not favored by the leadership of the Democratic Party in the House. They weren't behind it. She only had a handful of people who were on board with her, but she introduced those articles of impeachment. What happened then? Renee Good was murdered by an ICE agent. Alex Preddy was murdered by federal agents. And all of a sudden you saw a huge number of new members coming on board with those articles of impeachment, to the point where they then announced, Hakeem Jeffries and all these people, Raskin, they all announced, we're now getting behind these articles of impeachment and we're going to hold hearings. Now, they didn't have, to Donald's point, they didn't have the majority to actually hold formal hearings, but they started to hold shadow hearings. And that helped to build the case. I do think her firing is in large part because of that momentum that was built around the case for impeaching her. So there's value in having the shadow hearings. As far as the Senate, we cannot predict today what will happen in the Senate. What we do know is if we sit around and do nothing and say we're not going to invoke the impeachment power, then we're giving up on the Constitution entirely. This is in the Constitution. This is the remedy the framers put there to deal with a lawless president, and we have to invoke it.
That's their job. They need to do it. I mean, if they're not doing that, they all need to resign, because obviously the Constitution has been besmirched beyond recognition at this point. There's not a country. The fact that Trump has taken money from Ukraine and for their weapons and using it for himself. They can't produce weapons quick enough. They're so far behind the time, besides starting a new war. So you got the whole thing to talk.
Well, you got to remember also that they, most of you are too young to remember, but when the impeachment movement against Richard Nixon, they built and they built and they built. And it was finally the Republicans that came to Nixon and told Howard Baker, came to Nixon and told him he had to leave.
The leverage.
So you never know what's going to happen to these Republicans. That's why I say you got to call Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Greene, and she's ferocious, man. So don't write these people calls, because when Nixon left, he was never removed, never impeached, but he left, and it was the Republicans that made him leave. Tatanka, go ahead.
Yeah.
This is Tatanka. He's one of our co-hosts, you guys, and he's the chair of the board of the KPFK radio station in LA.
A suggestion for the education going on around the country and the shadow impeachment things. At No Kings on Santa Cruz, a congressional attorney, Danny Sheehan, who you all know who he is, and from New York Times, first case he ever did for the Ellsberg thing, Iran-Contra, et cetera, never lost a case. What he did there was he took out the Declaration of Independence. It took less than 15 minutes. And he read the Declaration of Independence, including all the things that they were talking about the king, all the reasons for it. And then people in the crowd would go, check, check. And it was stunning. It was stunning because all tyrants follow the patterns. So all tyrants do the same shit. And he went down the thing and
just made some words for Steve. You guys don't know we can't use 4-letter words.
Okay, caca. What can I use?
Perfect. You can use vote.
Okay, you go down the list and you read the United States Constitution, and it says it's not only it's not just an opportunity. It's not just what is recommended. It is an obligation as a citizen to do this. And every single one of those things Donald Trump has done. This is the U.S. Constitution, okay? I mean, this is the U.S. Declaration of Independence. So that's my suggestion. It was fantastic. They decided against 3 speakers. They had Danny be the one. He took 15 minutes, and then they went out, and, thousands of people went out into the town. But people hear Donald Trump, and people are saying, what, this was written back then? It sounds like you're making it up right now. And he's reading from the Declaration of Independence.
Well, there you go. So we do have the law on our side. Just like with nuclear power, we got economics on our side. And the economics, of course, are working to our advantage at this point. But
And Sonny, I also want to thank you, Jessica. I want to thank you, John. Just thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your persistence. And I think you can feel the hearts going up. And Jessica, you're right. If we get out in front and allow the people of No Kings to have a say, you know they're with us. You know Bruce and everybody who's up there is with us. And every little person we don't know the name of is with us.
okay, this is another, thank you for that, Tatanka. This is another guy. This is David Saltman. David has a long history with the networks. He was at every major network. He's a two-time Emmy winner. Salty, what do you got, bro? Oh, I got him. There you go. Oh, shoot. Hold on.
Turn your camera on.
Joe,
Can you
there
hear
we
me?
go. Yeah, we got you. Go for
it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tatanka, but I believe the Declaration of Independence was a document justifying the violent overthrow of the government. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. And he stressed that this is a nonviolent overthrow, but you're right.
I mean,
we're not overthrowing the government. We're just removing
the king.
I'm just saying that if you cite I agree with you. I've actually looked at it close up when I was at the National Archives, violating the rules. But and you know, I don't want to be on record for violence, but these guys are violent.
Part of
Second Amendment works both ways. You know, back in the 20s and 30s, the Second Amendment was a pro-union constitutional amendment.
I will disassociate myself from any claim that there needs to be a violent approach here.
I'm not claiming it. I'm just stating the fact.
I understand. David,
as a lawyer, you'll understand when I say.
But the invoking of the impeachment power is a nonviolent act. This is not the same. To be fair to your point, David Saltman, this is not the same as invoking the Declaration of Independence. This is about using the Constitution, what is already there. The framers understood that there would be this threat that might emerge. They set the co-equal branches of government to ensure there would be no monarchs, no tyrants who would govern the nation, but they put in this extra guardrail. Extra guardrail, Section 4 of Article 2, the impeachment clause. And they put it there because they knew that even with those three co-equal branches of government, there might come a day when a president would so trample on the Constitution, so trample on the rule of law, that president would need to be held accountable via the impeachment and removal process. And that's what we're fighting for, the nonviolent resistance fight to invoke the impeachment power, remove Donald Trump from power, remove his co-conspirators, and yes, hold them accountable after that process with respect to war crimes they've committed, crimes against humanity. But the first order of business is to have them impeached and removed. And we need to keep making that case and building it, regardless of whether those people in elite positions of power are willing to back us at this time. They're going to get there if we keep pushing it, but we got to keep building that case.
And it's our opportunity at this moment in human history, with the potential of nuclear war, climate change, etc., as we go along the way, to say what Martin Luther King said: those who make nonviolent revolution impossible, make violent revolution inevitable. We are part of that group that says nonviolence works. It's working, and that's one thing that No Kings has been good to do and assiduous. It's amazing. We never had 7, 8, 9 billion people demonstrating in the 60s without violence. People understand the moment, and we can say this is a paradigm shift of consciousness in so many ways. And so we can both quote the thing that was used at that day with their days, and we can reframe it nonviolent. It's not difficult to do.
Let me very quickly. This is a particular gripe of mine. I've been through the Bill of Rights 1,000 times because I taught history, and the Second Amendment starts a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The Second Amendment says that you cannot own a gun unless you're in a militia, or you can prove that it is necessary to the security of a free state. All these people running around saying they're Second Amendment acts types never read the amendment. You have no legal right to a gun if you're not in a militia. And you have no legal right to a gun if you can't prove that it serves the security of a free state. I hate guns, but that's the Second Amendment. And to never concede that these clowns can run around with guns shooting up schools under protection of the Second Amendment. If they're not in the National Guard, if they can't show it serves the security of the free state, they have no business with a gun. Never concede the Second Amendment. Okay, sorry about that. Jessica, John, I did want to get to election protection because it's very important. But do you want to say something first before I take us into those weeds? Because John and I have been there for 20 years.
Please go ahead. Yeah, I'd love to take a question. I think both of us kind of have to jump in the next 5 minutes or so. So if you want to go into that for a minute, let's definitely go.
Yes. Okay. So I lived in Columbus, Ohio with my buddy Bob Fitrakis, who was a great expert on election protection. He had been to El Salvador. We also were very friendly with Greg Palast. Greg Palast showed that the 2000 election was definitely won by Al Gore, and it was stolen by Jeb Bush, the governor of Florida. And Al Gore completely dropped the ball to the extent that he did not allow the Black Caucus in the Congress, which he was presiding over, to do a constitutional challenge. You go back to 2000, and then the Democrats, these same Democrats we're tearing our hair about, blamed Ralph Nader for the next 20 years, which is completely ridiculous. Then in 2004, John came in. Bob and I showed 100 different ways that Karl Rove stole the election in Ohio 2004. The Republicans, we published our stuff, they couldn't have cared less, but John Kerry attacked us and would never raise the issue of a stolen election in 2004, which we can prove 6 days from Sunday. Then in 2010, the Republicans in the midterms basically stole the midterms, took over the Congress, and more importantly, took over a couple dozen state legislatures. And Barack Obama never raised the issue, and he holds a very cutesy Obama-esque press conference saying he got shellacked. Maybe you people will remember that, but that's what gave the Republicans.
Sonny, we need
I'm
our
almost done, Mike.
guests.
Almost done. And that's what gave Republicans the control of the state legislatures. In 2016, Hillary Clinton had the right from a judge to do a recount in Michigan, which was clearly stolen. She wouldn't do it there or in Pennsylvania or in Wisconsin. Donald Trump did not win the 2016 election. And in 2024, 6 ways from Monday, we know how they did it with the computers. The 2024 election was not stolen, it was bought and paid for. Where was Kamala Harris the day after the election? Come on.
Harvey,
now we're getting more of the same.
Here's what I'm going to say to all this, right? I think that the one friendly, disagreement I have is that I'm all for verifying the process.
Yes.
I think that we need verification. You and I know in 2004, you and Bob and Reverend Jackson were contesting the Ohio election results. On the parallel side, we were involved. I was the lead counsel in the recount case in Ohio, even though John Kerry didn't show up. So recounts are a form of verification. And we did issue a letter at Free Speech for People signed by computer scientists all across the country, urging Kamala Harris to engage in recounts in the 7 swing states. She didn't do it, and we didn't have a verification of the vote. What we have in many of these places where we don't engage in any strong audits and we don't engage in any recounts is we have what's called faith-based voting. We just believe in the computer tallies, and we don't look at the hand-marked paper ballots where they exist. And in these jurisdictions that don't have hand-marked paper ballots, there's nothing to actually recount.
That's called push and pray.
Yeah. So what we need is evidence-based voting, and that includes very strong audits. Rhode Island's the best state in the country with a strong audit law, but we also need candidates to engage in calling for recounts when there are questionable things that have happened in the election, or there even is a close election. We have to remember that Al Franken was declared the loser against Norm Coleman in his first Senate race. Then there was a recount, and they found that he actually won. And we know in the 2000 election that what happened, there's the Supreme Court for the first time in our history hand selected the president of the United States. They stopped the recount in Florida. So that's a critical piece of election protection, is demanding verification. But even leading up to that process, we have to obviously be clear that if ICE agents or other military forces are showing up at the polls, that's going to be a clear voter intimidation scheme and needs to be stopped. And all these other kinds of voter intimidation schemes needs to be stopped as well. So we're going to be very vigilant about that in the coming months.
Yes, and we've already seen Steve Bannon in his smug way saying that the ICE agents in the airports is now a dress rehearsal for the elections. Clear as day. And if you see Greg Palast's movie, Vigilantes Inc., you know what these guys do at the polling stations. There's no reason for them to be there except if they're there to intimidate voters. And all this stuff about voter verification of ID and stuff, it's extraneous to ICE. That's not what ICE does if they're at the polls. They're there to check ID, to look for, immigrants. And what are they really doing? We know what they're really doing.
Yeah. So I know Jessica and I have to go, but Jessica, do you want to add in the point? Because you've covered this a lot.
All I'll say is I think this really just brings us full circle to the impeachment, because if you look at the mainstream right now, so much of stock is being put in the midterm elections, and people like John and I, and those of us, and you all are so many years ahead of the curve on this and knowing how vulnerable our elections are. But I think it's going to take a very sharp wake-up call in these midterms if they are interfered with for many on the Democratic side to finally confront the fact that our elections have been so vulnerable, which is why we are pushing relentlessly for the constitutional remedy to this. A few minutes ago, I'll just end with this thought. Somebody said, what about the Senate? We need those 67 votes. That seems impossible. They must be looking at the scenario as impossible. I think of it like this. If you had a child that was kidnapped or a family member that was being held hostage, and you were told the one thing you could do to get that person out of captivity was to get the 67 people that are totally not on your side to agree on something, what would you do? You would pull out every single stop in the world to get those 67 people where you needed to be. And that you would just put all of your energy and focus into convincing 67 people, not to mention out of a country of hundreds of millions, we're literally letting 67 people hijack our democracy. You would put all the eggs into the basket of influencing those people.
Absolutely.
That's just where our energy should be right now.
We still have 73 people with us, John, and you guys are rock stars. You got to come
so
back.
much, Harvey.
I know a few rock stars, by the way, so you're in their category. But election protection is the other piece of this puzzle. And John's a great expert on this, but we need 100%. The machines are push and pray, and then they're throwing away the hand. It's no accident Trump doesn't want mail-in ballots, because he wanted to ice at the polls to intimidate people. You can't intimidate people when they're mailing in the ballot. So John, you and Jessica, you got to come back.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having us. It was great.
You're a great audience. Thank you guys so much.
Take care now.
Guys.
Keep
No
fighting.
nukes, everybody.
All right.
And we can go.
I just wanted to say it doesn't take 67. I mean, we have some Democrats in there. So
Exactly.
subtract the number of Democrats from 67, and that's what we have to do.
That's what we need. Exactly. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, it's a little under 20. So there you go. And Dorothy, I know that you'll be in the U.S. Senate voting for removal at that time.
Dorothy for Senate.
Absolutely. Steve Caruso, did you want to jump in? We can stay till for 16 more minutes before it's toke-up time.
Oh, we have the primaries going on right now. So this is the midterms. What happened in Texas with Jasmine Crockett? They changed the polling places. She lost, right?
Allegedly.
Yeah, and they changed the polling places without telling anybody. So all these people show up at their old places. There's an article out about it. I wish I had it. I might have it. It'll take me a half hour to find it right here, but that's what they're going to be doing. All these little things that they can leverage to take down the vote. And this is leverage in the negative fashion, whereas we can do leverage in the positive fashion by pushing impeachment, making it easier for the senators and the representatives to understand that it doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out trial, that all they have to say is that, yeah, he didn't obey his oath. He swore an oath to the Constitution. The Constitution says this, yes, yeah, but I think John and Jessica are on to something there with that. I wish that it would be more lucid in terms of people understanding how easy it can be. Not that it should be easy, but it's obvious that something's wrong here, right?
There's what's called a world-class understatement. There is something wrong here. Mike Hersh, did you want to jump in here? I know you were trying to say some stuff before. Mike Hersh, are you in here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an incredible conversation. We're just starting. We've got a long way to go. I think a lot of people need to kind of listen to what some of the people were saying, including you, Sonny, and you, Steve, that we haven't just thought about this like 5 seconds ago, and it's like, yeah, let's impeach, and then all the Republicans will remove Trump. That's not what we're saying. What we are saying is that, you know, if there's like some kind of some kind of a crime syndicate boss, we don't say, well, if we arrest him, the new crime syndicate boss might be worse. If somebody is like a complete monster, we try to get rid of them, and then we deal with the next person. Let's not try to overcomplicate this. The Constitution is very, very clear. Trump is violating the Constitution up and down daily, several times a day. The solution is we need to impeach him, convict him, remove him, and put him on trial for the felonies he's committed. And he was being convicted of 34 felonies already. He's been accused of attacking and raping underage women, children. You know, we need to not make this more complicated than it has to be. There's a huge criminal crime wave that's going on. And let's not say, oh, well, you know, it's going to be difficult to do. Yeah, we know. But don't let it get in our way. We have to do what we have to do. We have to clean this mess up.
We do indeed. Dave Solomon, you raised a good issue on the nature of the declaration. And do you want to pursue that?
Well, I would like to observe that if you're talking about a well-regulated militia, it's not one that wears masks and goes around without any identification badges of any kind and is basically running loose all over American cities. That is a clear violation of the militia law. And I can't believe that's legal in any way whatsoever, even in terms of law enforcement.
That's a really good point. Yeah, what's the basic difference between ICE and the Gestapo?
Good question.
The Gestapo didn't wear masks.
Yeah, good point.
They didn't. Those guys did not wear masks.
They didn't wear masks, and they carried their ID with them. You knew who they were, you know. But these guys are, you know, there were some laws. I can't remember exactly, but I think in California back in the 60s, there were laws against people going masked for the exact point that they scared ordinary citizens, and there was a presumption they were going to commit a crime.
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, it's really, of course, the other big difference is that the guys in the Gestapo spoke German. But anyway, well, this has been a tremendous session. I really am grateful for the discussion about Putin and this Iran war. I just cannot believe that his name never comes up as an influencer that would have inclined Trump to attack Iran.
I think where you find it, Was, is in the business news. Everybody, like Bloomberg, is all over the fact that Putin is making a fortune from the closure of the Straits of Hormuz.
But nobody's making the connection that he could have influenced Trump to start the war. It's all about Netanyahu, and believe me, no fan of Netanyahu, but I'll bet Putin said, Putin clearly has something on Trump. And we all know what there's two things. Everybody knows the one part, the first part, but it's also money laundering. I mean, he's got the receipts.
Right.
And you can't tell me that Putin couldn't step into a phone booth and call Donald and tell him to jump and well, I don't know if Trump can jump, but maybe step on his heels or something. But anyway, we have someone has their hand. Who's this, please? Lynn Mystic
Lynn.
Healer. Lynn, go ahead. We're down to 9 minutes before everybody goes and tokes up. And I will say that, I think we spent at least half this call bashing the Democrats. No one's ever going to accuse us of being partisan here. The Democrats have been the problem. There's a problem. Let's put it that way. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello. Sorry. Thank you so much for letting me speak. Thank you. Okay. I put a bunch of stuff in the chat. I helped start Veterans for Peace with my Army Captain brother in Code Pink, work with johnperkins.org, Bastions of an Economic Hitman. I'm an environmentalist from way back, helps with single payer healthcare. I'm an Oregon change agent. I've got certificates all over the place for my work with jobs creation.
Well, you don't need a certificate to speak on this call. So go.
Okay, thank you. Single payer healthcare. Anyway, the truth is, heart and soul humans, we're up against robots. If you've got to share the robotic push, and not with the data centers, not just the humanoid robots. Right now, you can get the YouTubes with the super soldier humanoid robots. You got the drones already. How many nuclear weapon sites, how many sites are we going to get bombed? If you reap what you sow, Christians, what are you sowing? Okay, we're sowing war. Okay, we went from defense to war, straight out focus on war. What we focus on, we help manifest. They're using us upside down to bring humans together. Behavioral science, the most important science on the planet. Any red, yellow, black, or white, period. You're angry, upset, your answers are inside of you or me, and it might be past lives. They took past lives out of the Bible in 300 AD. This Bible stuff has gotten way wrong. And what we're up against is we actually have interfaith hand-to-hand schools, okay, we could be putting in place. Trade schools, art, they're turnaround art schools at a Kennedy Center. I mean, I'm here to put together multicultural body, mind, spirit, alternative healing bases open 24/7. We can heal addictions, moderate to severe, everything they give big pharma drugs for with horrible side effects can be healed, you guys. I have 4,000, almost 4,000 on LinkedIn. There's 4,000 heaven to earth businesses that kids know nothing about worldwide. We're supposed to be bringing this new system of evolution of our species, harmony. We're all connected, like it or not, resonance. These satanic ones are into death, destruction, torture, abuse, pedophilia, and we've got to stop them, and the robots will show them. I mean, they better look at the YouTubes with humanoid robot super soldiers. Frightening, okay? Really, I mean, so anyway, I just want to say science, behavioral science. If you're angry, upset, your answers are inside of you. We don't need any guns anywhere. You pay people to care. I put a legislation, CARES Act. You pay people to care. Their answers are inside of them. Okay, there's family constellation counseling. There's medical hypnosis, healing touch. Okay, please.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you.
We can't keep up, Lynn. You're talking too fast. I mean,
okay. That's great,
you're gonna have to put it in the chat and give us some links or something because
put some stuff in the chat.
It's hard.
Go ahead, Steve. Did you want to say something?
Constitution 14.4 rebel debt: neither the Fed government nor any state can assume or pay debts incurred to support insurrection against the U.S. Okay, the Union debt: the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including pensions and bounties for suppressing rebellion, shall not be questioned.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. Okay, well, listen, we're down to 5 minutes. Anybody else want to jump in before we toke up here? Dave Solomon, I want your latest comment on Barry Weiss. I did, and what's happening. I want to recommend strongly to everybody. I watched John Oliver last night. It was really, really brilliant, and he did a whole thing on Hungary and on Orban. And I read in the Times the other day that they're now having a campaign in Hungary where the ads are completely disconnected from reality. That they're just like running just total AI and nothing to do with anything. The guy who's running against Orban, the dictator, is actually center right. He's not particularly progressive in any way, shape, or form. And they don't know if Orban's going to let him live. But John Oliver on Orban, really worth watching. What's going to happen? We now have CBS and Fox who are basically in the same place politically. We know that CNN is vulnerable. ABC, NBC. I mean, the next billionaire walks down the hall. What kind of media are we going to be left with, Dave Saltman?
Well, I can only tell you where I go these days, which is ProPublica, and they do a great job, but they're just not comprehensive like the old media you tried to be, and you never got it 100% right. And Bloomberg, they are very objective. It's one thing about dealing with money all the time as your sort of your lingua franca of that medium. You tend to get it right. The stakes are too high to make mistakes. You try to get it right. They work hard. They're very good at it. Other than that,
the Wall Street Journal used to be that way.
I'm sorry?
Remember when we were in Ann Arbor, we used to read the Wall Street Journal for the news.
That's
the
right.
Wall Street Journal was very reliable. The editorials make you puke, but the news was good.
That's the point. The guy who runs ProPublica is the former editor of the Wall Street Journal, Paul Steiger. That's why it's so good. It's all because of him. He's a terrific journalist.
Yeah, I have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal too, and they let you give out gift articles. Lots of times their articles can
The
be gifted
editorial
for free.
page is a whole different story, but the news pages have always been first class, and he was the editor for many, many years.
Wow.
So I just wanted to say also that MS Now, their ratings are way up, and we really need to support them. I said this before, just leave your TV on MS Now, keep their ratings up because they're what we have.
Who owns MS Now, Dorothy?
I don't even know who owns it, but they're certainly the only Democratic focused major media that we have.
It's hard to keep
of course, listen to Democracy Now! Every morning. Drop Site News, very good. I don't know if you guys know Ian Masters, a podcast called Background Briefing. Very, very high level. Has incredible people on there.
I love Tom Hartman. Tom
Hartman's good, but
really good.
Ian Masters he digs deep. You gotta listen to him really. Because
and I gotta say,
on the regular media.
For those of you who are into sports, I don't know how many.
Zirin.
Well, but Charles Barkley, the round mound of rebound, who once he once claimed that he was misquoted in his autobiography. But he had a beautiful rap today against ICE on a sportscast. Charles Barkley. So
he's been all over TV today.
Yeah. So he's a good guy, Charles Barkley.
On MS Now.
He was a great ball player. So
I just want to make one point about this, Harvey. And I know I've hammered this before, but to me, it makes a big difference as a professional journalist. There's a difference between being a brilliant commentator like Charles Barkley or somebody like that.
or Stephen
and
Colbert.
being a news reporter. Okay, send it up. The problem with Charles Barkley is he doesn't go out to basketball in Mongolia and do a report on how basketball is taking over Mongolia. He makes brilliant comments, and that's great. And John Oliver too. And I got to say, giving John Oliver his due, he really does try to fact check his material. But here's the problem, and I know
Okay, and you're a wrap. So, oh no,
the
I got
problem
Nicole on.
is you can make a lot of mistakes covering the news. And unless you have the experience, it's very difficult to recover from those.
Okay, well, we're good for that. Nicole, you'll be the last.
Hello.
And then we're gonna rock. Oh, and then Steve, and then we'll go.
Yes, hi. Thank you. I put in the chat here
Thank you,
two
Dave.
articles about the American Gulag. Like 73% of the people that they put in the Minnesota detention center, they were put there unjustly, and they was deported unjustly. So these two
Absolutely.
articles, yeah, these two articles, I would like everybody to send to their congressmen and their senators, and also particularly the Florida Senate president and the Florida House Speaker leader, because they are the one that are enabling our governor to do that by continuing to give him the emergency powers. And the other thing is we have to get rid of the money. So if we get rid of his emergency power, he can't use it for the alligator thing anymore. And we
Right.
have to get rid of Russell Vogt.
There you go.
He has the money, the purse.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicole. And Steve Caruso, you're going to send us off here. Still have 53 people with us. My God, you people, you're so great. We won't be meeting next week. It's Easter Monday, so 2 weeks from today, we'll be back together. Steve, go ahead.
Keep the pressure up, keep the leverage up. Kristi Noem's gone. What else? What else can we do here?
Yeah, every dog in the country must be terrified by now. But listen, everybody,
You're on the
thank
loose.
you. Thank you, Steve, for running the show. We appreciate it. Mike Hirsch, thanks for talent hunting. Howie Hawkins, Myler, thank you for being with us. Tatanka, Dave Saltman, everybody. No nukes, everybody. Lynn, Mystic Healer, keep up. And we will see you all in 2 weeks, okay? By then, the impeachment trial will be going on. No nukes, everybody. Myler Easton, thank you. We'll talk.
Dorothy, real quick. Dorothy,
you want to say something more?
No.
If you want to know what's going on with the Epstein files, you can go to Nina Burley at American Freak Show. She has a Substack, and she's all over this stuff.
Yeah, and remember this name, Katie Johnson. All
yeah,
right,
well, Nina Burley. All right, so she's the writer about it. She's not she's not a victim. She's just a reporter.
Well, we're all victims, for God's sakes.
Yeah, well, she didn't
No
get raped.
nukes, everybody. Dorothy, thank you for coming on. Thank you, Jessica and John Bonifaz, for being with us. Roger Rapoport, Kevin Kamps, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks. No nukes, everybody.